The silent years. The transmission array hummed in the darkness, its massive dishes pointing toward empty space like metal flowers reaching for stars that would never answer back. Dr. Maya Chun stood alone in the control room, her reflection ghostly, in the monitor screens that displayed nothing but static and silence. 50 years of messages sent into the void, and not a single response. The facility stretched around her like a mechanical cathedral, banks of computers processing signals from across the galaxy, searching for any sign that Earth was not alone. But Maya knew better now. They were not alone, and that was the problem. The observers had been watching for months, their sleek ships visible against the star field, never approaching, never responding, just watching and waiting. Maya pulled her coat tighter against the cold air conditioning and checked the chronometer. 3 hours until the final transmission. 3 hours until humanity either found its voice or prepared for war. The irony was not lost on her. For half a century, Earth had been shouting messages of peace, friendship, and scientific cooperation. Into space. Mathematical sequences, artistic expressions, detailed explanations of human culture and philosophy, all broadcast on frequencies that any advanced civilization should be able to detect and understand. The early messages had been hopeful, almost naive in their optimism. Greetings from the people of Earth, they began. We come in peace, seeking friendship among the stars. Scientists had crafted these transmissions with care, assuming that any species capable of interstellar travel would share humanity's curiosity and desire for peaceful contact. They had been wrong about almost everything. Maya walked to the observation deck and stared up through the reinforced glass at the night sky. Somewhere up there, perhaps light years away, alien minds were analyzing every word humanity had ever broadcast. They had the technology to respond, that much was certain. The ships observing Earth from just beyond the moon's orbit proved they could travel between stars. Yet they remained silent, content to watch as Earth's population grew increasingly. Desperate and afraid, the first confirmed sighting had happened 18 months ago. A research station on the far side of the moon detected an object that did not belong there, sleek and crystalline, clearly artificial. Within days, more appeared. They maintained perfect distance, never approaching close enough for detailed study, never leaving the outer system. They simply observed. The world had reacted with a mixture of wonder and terror. Initial excitement about first contact quickly gave way to anxiety as the aliens refused all attempts at communication. Earth sent increasingly desperate messages, broadcasting on every conceivable frequency, using every mathematical and scientific principle that might serve as a universal language. The response was always the same: silence. Maya remembered the early days of her career, when she had believed that communication was simply a matter of finding the right approach, the correct frequency, the perfect message that would bridge the gap between species. She had been part of the team that designed the Cultural Heritage Transmission, a comprehensive broadcast that included music, art, literature, and scientific achievements from across human civilization. They had sent it toward the nearest potentially habitable star systems, confident that any intelligent species would recognize the beauty and complexity of human culture that the transmission had taken months to prepare. Linguists worked with mathematicians to create universal translation matrices. Artists collaborated with scientists to select representative works that would showcase human creativity and intelligence. The final broadcast lasted 47 hours and contained compressed data equivalent to thousands of years of human knowledge and achievement. It was humanity's greatest collaborative effort, a love letter to the cosmos that demonstrated everything wonderful about their species. The silence that followed had been deafening. Maya's reflection in the window showed a woman aged by disappointment. Her black hair was now streaked with gray, and lines around her eyes spoke of too many sleepless nights spent listening to empty static. She had joined the SETI project 25 years ago, fresh from graduate school and convinced that first contact was just a matter of time and technique. She had watched colleagues resign one by one as years passed without results, their optimism eroded by the vast indifference of the universe. But Maya had stayed, even after the accident that took her family, even after the budget cuts that closed half the listening stations, even after the world began to lose interest in peaceful contact and started talking about weapons and defense. She stayed because someone had to keep listening, someone had to keep trying, someone had to believe that communication was possible. The accident had happened during one of the early sighting confirmations. Public panic about the alien observers had triggered riots in major cities around the world. Maya's husband and daughter had been caught in one of those riots, killed by frightened people who thought the end of the world was coming. Maya had buried them on a Tuesday and returned to work on Wednesday because grief had to have a purpose, and her purpose was finding a way to talk to the beings who had inadvertently caused their deaths. The control room door chimed, and Director Harrison entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the expression of a man who had not slept in days. "Any word from Geneva?" Maya asked, accepting the cup gratefully. Harrison shook his head. The Security Council is still debating the final message content. Half of them want to broadcast surrender terms. The other half want to send technical specifications for our weapons as a deterrent. Maya laughed bitterly. They still think this is about military power. What else could it be about? Harrison sat heavily in the chair beside her. We've tried everything else. Science, culture, mathematics, music. We've shown them our art, our history, our philosophical traditions. We've demonstrated our intelligence, our creativity, our capacity for beauty. Nothing works. Maybe that's exactly the problem. Maya stared at the transmission logs scrolling across her screen. 50 years of messages, carefully crafted to show humanity at its best, its most peaceful, its most civilized. What if we've been lying to them? Harrison frowned. Lying how? Look at these messages, David. Every single one of them presents humanity as peaceful, cooperative, enlightened beings who have somehow transcended their violent nature through science and philosophy. We've been broadcasting the version of ourselves we wish we were, not the version we actually are. Maya pulled up the transmission archives, decades of carefully sanitized communications. We send them symphonies, but not war songs. We show them art from museums, but not graffiti from battlefields. We broadcast our scientific achievements, but never mention that half of them came from military research. We're showing them a species that doesn't exist, because the species that does exist is too dangerous to advertise, Harrison said quietly. Or maybe it's too honest. Maya stood and walked to the main control panel. Think about it. We're the species that survived ice ages, plagues, asteroid impacts, and countless wars with ourselves. We're the species that went from stone tools to spaceflight in less than 10,000 years. We're the species that stands up to bullies, fights for the underdog, and refuses to surrender even when the odds are impossible. She turned to face Harrison, her eyes bright with sudden understanding. We've been trying to convince them we're peaceful. But what if peaceful species don't survive long enough to develop interstellar travel? What if they're not looking for friends? What if they're looking for fighters? Harrison was quiet for a long moment, staring at the displays showing the positions of the alien observers. That's a dangerous assumption to base our survival on. All of our assumptions so far have been wrong, Maya replied. Maybe it's time to try being dangerous. The communication console chimed with an incoming message from Geneva. The final transmission had been approved, another carefully worded message of peaceful intentions and offers of scientific cooperation. Maya read it twice, then deleted it. Maya, what are you doing? I'm going to tell them the truth. She began typing, her fingers moving with sudden certainty. Not the truth we want them to hear, but the truth about who we really are. The truth about the species that climbed out of the caves, built cities, survived disasters, and reached for the stars, not because we were peaceful, but because we were too stubborn to stay down. Harrison moved to stop her, then hesitated. The world leaders will never approve that kind of message. Maya smiled grimly. Then we won't ask them. She engaged the emergency broadcast protocol, locking out external control of the transmission array. For the next 6 hours, the decision would be hers alone. Asterisk. The message she began to craft was unlike anything humanity had ever sent into space. No mathematical proofs, no artistic demonstrations, no philosophical treatises. Just the raw, unvarnished truth about a species that had earned its place among the stars through determination, sacrifice, and an absolute refusal to surrender. As Maya worked, the alien observers maintained their silent vigil, waiting for humanity to finally show them something real. The truth transmission Maya's fingers hovered over the transmission controls as she read through her message one final time. 6 hours of work had produced something unprecedented in the history of human space communication. No flowery language about peace and cooperation. No sanitized presentation of human achievements. Instead, she had written the story of a species that survived by fighting. This is Earth, the message began. We are not the peaceful civilization our previous transmissions claimed. We are the survivors of 10,000 years of war, disaster, and extinction-level threats. We are the species that looked at impossible odds and decided to fight anyway. Harrison stood behind her, reading over her shoulder. Maya, this could start a war, or prevent one. She initiated the power-up sequence for the deep space array. The massive dishes began to align with their target coordinates, pointing toward the dense star fields where long-range sensors had detected the highest concentration of artificial signals. If alien civilizations were out there, this message would reach them. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day, the transmission continued. Ice ages that should have wiped us out, supervolcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun, asteroid impacts that destroyed most life on our world. Each time, we survived by being tougher, smarter, and more determined than anything trying to eliminate us. Maya thought about her husband and daughter as she reviewed the next section. Their deaths had been caused by human panic, but that panic itself was part of the truth she was trying to convey. We are not perfect. We fight among ourselves, sometimes for resources, sometimes for ideas, sometimes simply because fighting is in our nature. But we also sacrifice everything for strangers. We die for principles. We refuse to abandon anyone, even when abandonment would be logical. The transmission array reached full power, and Maya could feel the energy building in the massive system. Soon, her message would race across the galaxy at the speed of light, carrying humanity's true story to anyone listening. She wondered if the alien observers would detect the broadcast. She hoped they would be the first to hear it. You have been watching us, the message continued, addressing the observers directly. You have seen our cities, our weapons, our struggles. You know we are capable of violence. But you have not seen everything. You have not seen a human mother carry her injured child through a war zone. You have not seen soldiers share their last rations with prisoners. You have not seen scientists work for decades on problems they will never solve, simply because the next generation might benefit from their failures. Harrison moved to the emergency console. I should stop this. The President, the UN, they never authorized. They authorized 50 years of lies. Maya interrupted without looking away from her work. This is 50 years overdue. The message described humanity's expansion into space, but not as a peaceful exploration of the cosmos. Instead, Maya told the story of a species so determined to survive that they were willing to leave their home planet entirely rather than accept extinction. She wrote about the risks they had taken, the sacrifices they had made, the way they had turned their survival instinct into a drive to explore and discover. "We do not seek conflict," the transmission continued, "but we do not fear it either. We have fought ice and fire, plague and starvation, our own worst impulses and the indifference of the universe. We are still here because we do not know how to surrender. If you are judging whether we deserve a place among the stars, judge us by our scars, not our words." The final section of the message contained something unprecedented in diplomatic communications. With alien species, Maya included a compressed data file containing humanity's military history, not as a threat, but as proof of their character. Battle footage from major conflicts, recordings of soldiers protecting civilians, documentation of humanitarian efforts in war zones, stories of individual heroism in impossible circumstances. "This is who we are," the message concluded. "We are the species that stands up to bullies, fights for the helpless, and refuses to quit even when victory is impossible. We are not asking for your friendship. We are not offering you peace. We are simply stating facts. If you judge that insufficient, then we will face whatever comes next the way we have faced everything else. Together, fighting and never giving up." Maya engaged the transmission protocol. The message began broadcasting on multiple frequencies, simultaneously using every watt of power the facility could generate. The signal would be detectable across hundreds of light years, impossible to miss for any civilization with advanced sensors. "How long before we know if anyone received it?" Harrison asked. "Depends on how far away they are," Maya replied, monitoring the broadcast status. "Could be minutes if the observers have faster-than-light communication. Could be decades if we're relying on radio waves." They waited in the humming silence of the control room, watching status displays that showed the message propagating outward through space. Maya felt strangely calm, as if she had finally done something that had needed doing for a very long time. Whatever happened next, at least the universe would know what humanity actually was. The response came 18 minutes later. It did not arrive as a radio signal. Instead, every screen in the facility suddenly displayed the same image, a complex, geometric pattern that shifted and evolved as they watched. The pattern was beautiful and obviously artificial, but it was the accompanying data that made Maya's breath catch in her throat. The response was not coming from one source. According to the sensors, identical signals were being received simultaneously from 47 different points in space, many of them far beyond the range where radio communications should have been possible. The alien observers were not alone. The geometric patterns resolved into text displayed in perfect English. Message received and analyzed. It read, "Response authorized by the Galactic Survival Council. Species designation, human. Status, approved. For contact." Harrison stared at the screen. "Galactic Survival Council?" More text appeared. "Your species has been under evaluation for integration into the galactic community. Previous transmissions indicated possible pacification syndrome, a condition that prevents species survival in competitive galactic environment. Recent transmission demonstrates maintained survival instincts and authentic species character. Integration. Approved." Maya laughed, a sound mixing relief and amazement. They were testing us. All those years of silence, they were waiting for us to stop lying about what we are. Assessment details, the text continued. Peaceful species rarely survive transition to galactic-level competition. Aggressive species rarely survive first contact with superior technology. Species combining survival instincts with protective impulses demonstrate optimal integration potential. Humanity exhibits required characteristics. The display changed, showing a star map with dozens of systems highlighted in green. Galactic Survival Council represents 137 species that achieved spaceflight through competitive evolution. Membership requires demonstrated ability to fight for survival and willingness to fight for others. Your species qualifies on both criteria. Harrison sat down heavily. They weren't ignoring us. They were waiting for us to be honest. Final communication protocol, the text displayed. Humanity has demonstrated authentic character suitable for galactic citizenship. Welcome to the community of survivors. First face-to-face contact will be initiated when your species demonstrates readiness for technological integration. Continue being yourselves. The screens went dark except for a single line of text. End transmission. See you soon. Maya stared at the empty screens, then began to laugh. All those carefully crafted messages of peace and cooperation. All those years of trying to present humanity as something they were not. And the aliens had been waiting for them to admit they were fighters. What do we tell the world? Harrison asked. Maya stood and walked to the observation deck, looking up at the stars that no longer seemed quite so distant. We tell them the truth. We tell them that the universe isn't looking for perfect beings or peaceful saints. It's looking for survivors who know how to protect what matters. She thought about her family, about all the humans who had lived and died fighting for something worth preserving. They had been part of humanity's real story, the story that had finally earned them a place among the stars. We tell them that humanity just got invited to join the toughest neighborhood in the galaxy, Maya continued, and we got invited because we're exactly the kind of species they need. The kind that doesn't give up, doesn't back down, and doesn't abandon anyone. The alien observers were still there, visible against the starfield, but they no longer seemed threatening. They seemed like what they had always been, colleagues waiting for humanity to stop pretending and start being themselves. For the first time in 50 years, Earth was no longer alone. And for the first time in her career, Maya Chun knew that humanity had found its voice among the stars by finally learning to tell the truth about who they really were. They were not the peaceful species they had pretended to be. They were something far more valuable. They were the species that survived by caring enough to fight. Asterisk.